Hi, I'm Laurence Parker-Brown. Welcome to the Inside Network. Private markets are moving into the mainstream, but for many advisors, the challenge is not so much access to a specific investable solution, but it's thinking about them holistically within a portfolio setting. For today's conversation, I'm delighted to be joined by the founder and executive chair at FinCap Australia, Christian Ryan.
Thank you. How are we?
Yeah, very well. So Christian, let's spell it out. For advisors right now, why are private markets so important?
Private markets today for advisors is a growing interest. I think it's also a growing area of opportunity. It's a universe that is significantly bigger than the listed world. And we're seeing more and more where companies and opportunities and assets are not heading towards the listed market for liquidity and accessing. So I think as things grow, advisors are becoming more and more engaged by allocating money, to private markets. I think the other big thing about why they're interested in private markets in particular is they're just not getting the day-to-day volatility, in the asset pricing. Now that has its pros and its cons, obviously, but generally, if you're picking the right managers and the right assets and doing a good thing, then you're not having to worry about, the day-to-day liquidity of these assets. I often explain it to people, it's like a home. Like we're not sitting there every day, are we? Looking at our pricing and worrying about whether it's gone up or down, So I think it's, there's a mindset shift that's occurring where people, I think still advisors and clients have got a better understanding of what that is, but they are becoming more confident. It's like, what is this all about? I can own some property, I can own businesses. It's just that they're not liquid. They could be better. They're generally, some of them are a lot better, than other business. So I think the combination of those sort of issues or topics are creating more interest for advisors to access private markets.
Now, the issue potentially, Christian, is not just that there's an access problem, but it's the implementation at the portfolio level. Can you capture what you think the key challenges are?
You're definitely correct. I think access to opportunity or access to product is just every day, every week, something's coming to market, whether that's from overseas groups coming to Australia or Australian groups and different platforms being able to provide you that access. So that's just got better and better, and that will keep getting better and better. I think the challenge is really how do you manage that as a portfolio? That's my I think biggest issue for most people is and advisors are struggling, I think, to distinguish between how do I pick different products in different market segments where the understanding of those products is you got to take another level of understanding. You just don't have the luxury at the end of the day that if you've got it wrong in the listed world, you can sell it straight away.
Sure.
If you've got it wrong or not right and you thought not what it was, if you want to get out of it, depending on your product, but generally, you've got to take your time to work out how do I redeploy or how do I reposition these assets. So, the private world is extensive, it's massive, it's huge. A lot of it happens where people don't really know much about it. So I think, that's a really important thing that advisors need to be thinking about, if they want to get into this space.
So I guess one of your key points as well is it's not just about selecting individually compelling assets, but blending them and thinking at the portfolio level about how the client receives them. Is that?
100%. Like I think we are designing today portfolios of different assets, diversification in this and this and this. But yet it's very difficult to do that on a portfolio approach for private assets. How do I, at a portfolio level, allocate to equity, credit, real estate, royalties, infrastructure, where I'm doing it from a portfolio approach point of view rather than just picking individual products. Managed accounts has made that, I suppose, infrastructure or technology much, much easier for advisors today. 75% of advice firms are using that technology to manage it at a portfolio level. But you can't do that currently, at a private asset level.
You've captured something there. There's a gap. Alongside the growth, you touched on it earlier, of international equities, we've seen managed accounts become increasingly prevalent. They work wonderfully well in the listed space, but not the private space. Why is that? What's the problem that you're hoping to fix?
I think it's the technology being available specific to the nuances of private assets. The technology exists, yes, for daily liquid, ETFs, managed funds, all that sort of stuff, but having the technology and not only the technology, but also I think the investment insight, research, knowledge specific to private assets. But then the third component being, how do I manage liquidity within these platforms and within this infrastructure? So it's not just about the technology, it's the combination of, you need the technology so you can manage hundreds of thousands of clients. But it's also, hey, have I got a well-founded research and understanding of the assets, the private assets you want to put into the portfolios? And once I'm in there, have I got the ability to have a team, resources, capability to manage the liquidity within the portfolio? How do I get in? Getting in is easy. Getting out and understanding how to get out and what that actually means at scale, is another thing. So for me, we're hoping that our platform is solving for those three key components.
You've captured, I think, one of the key hesitations that a lot of advisors would have, the liquidity component. As you say, allocating to it is easy, but then managing that on a client level across the practice. How are you trying to solve for that, Christian? What does it look like to have liquidity in private assets?
I think about liquidity as liquidity options. How can we create as many liquidity options as possible for the client and giving them the option to make decisions based on that liquidity profile? I think the challenge at the moment in the marketplace is you've got product providers almost sitting in hybrid land trying to provide solutions which are reasonable, for the wealth world, but at the same time manage, illiquid assets as part of their, they're part of the infrastructure. One of the things that, that we're trying to do is make sure there's can we create, or we'll hopefully have a secondary market to allow people to buy and sell these private assets outside of, the investment that it is. So I think it's really important for advisors and for the market to understand, can we do as many liquidity options as possible? Because these assets you can't get it tomorrow. It's some you can, maybe, but you don't have that marketplace like the ASX or, a bond market, or in the US in a secondary market, to be able to get out tomorrow, right? So there's got to be several layers of optionality for people to manage these assets appropriately. And if we can solve for that, which I think is what we are putting in place, then I think that will provide a lot more confidence for advisors to say, okay, well, there's good technology, it's well researched and supported, and I'll have, this ability for hopefully some better liquidity options than just, picking product from different platforms, different options, different admin systems. It makes it very difficult. So if we can put that together, which what we're doing, that I think we'll be in a good place.
You touched, Christian, on those pain points of different platforms, different documentation. You've also touched on perhaps the key one, which is the liquidity profile of these assets. If there's an active secondaries market in one platform, how much more confidence would that give advisors to allocate to the space? We see the big endowments in the US, the Future Fund here allocating to private markets. Where do you think this could go? What could be a sensible allocation?
Look, I would say I don't know if you want to call it mission or vision, is to be the home of private assets, right? And so that means, and we are actively talking with third-party financiers who are happy to step in as the secondary market buyer or seller, of assets held by private clients or by the wealth world. It's nothing new. People got to realize that institutions have been doing this for a long time. And it doesn't necessarily mean if they're buying an asset at a discount to NTA, right? So if something's worth $1 and that institution needs to get out for whatever reason, doesn't always mean that the asset itself is distressed or there's a problem with it. They just need to reallocate capital, whatever thinking that they need to do. So they can normally go to other large institutions or to secondary markets like in the US and say, look, I've got this asset, I'm happy to be a seller at 90 cents in the dollar versus $1, right? So it means that money is transacting. If you look at the volume of transactions that's going in private assets, across credit and equity, it's a very large volume. Just the problem down in advisor or private client level, that sort of secondary market doesn't really exist. The only way it does exist is if you want to go onto the ASX and buy an LIT or anything like that, and then you accept the price, positively or negatively, as to if you want to get out. Right? So the platform, hopefully, we're confident we'll put in place, if we can line up a number of finances that if a client truly wants to get outside of the normal redemption windows and requirements, and that's their choice because of various reasons, then they will have to accept a discount, and we'll have a financier there to buy that holding. So I think having that secondary nature will provide confidence to not only the client but the advisors. Yes, you might not get it tomorrow, but you might get it much, much quicker than waiting 6 months or 12 months. But look, on that point, I do like, more recently, I say to advisors, hey, let's just put this into perspective, right? You own a home. It's not like you wake up tomorrow and go, look, I need to sell my home, give me my money tomorrow. Sure. Right? You go through a process, you do this, it takes 3 months, it takes 6 months, right? You sell a commercial property, could take 6 months, could take 12 months. You go through a divorce. What happens in a divorce? No one sells assets generally. It sits there, got to wait a year depending on how good or bad the divorce is. And estate breakups, right? They take years. And normally, I generalise this position, is that the assets themselves, not much happens with them. They sort of sit there until there's a financial settlement and off you go, right? So we've got to also be better educated. And I said, I'll go back to the institutional sort of way that we've always thought about being in the listed world. The reality is we are selling and buying real assets, hard assets all over the place. And it takes months, if not years, to sort out. So why do we now fret when we invest in these assets? We need our money tomorrow. The reality is, for most clients that are probably more, if I look at where capital is now going to with intergenerational transfer of wealth and large families and movement of money, the capital pool, I think it's best displayed through, the stats in the platform, is mainly going to IDPS. It's a large amounts of capital. Clients don't need their money tomorrow. Yes, maybe retail clients, need to be thought about a little bit differently, because many of them might be drawing down, $500,000 and they're drawing down 10%. They're not getting the return, so they have to draw down on capital, and they might need. And I'm not sitting here. There's a place for listed, and I just think there's a place for unlisted, right? And I'm not saying one is actually better or the other. I just think there's great. We can't forget about this market because it is significantly bigger than the listed world, and it's just that we don't know enough about it, And so if we can be better educated, provide better opportunities, and have these, I think mechanisms in place, I think the marketplace will become bigger, which will then create better liquidity naturally by the market size growing.
So rounding us out, Christian, I think a lot of advisors listening will be quite interested in what this would look like. What sort of timescale could this be something they start to incorporate in their practice?
The platform that we're building out goes live in mid-June. We'll be allowing advisors and their clients to go on and register on the platform and start having a look around and look at the features and see how good it is. And then first dollars in will be from mid-June onwards. So it's been great. We've been working with our technology partner, and we've been able to shift very specifically a lot of the stuff that they're doing specific to private assets, because of the nuances, the different liquidity profiles, and even the reporting. The reporting is going to highlight where you're allocated in, whether it's in buyout, whether it's in VC, whether you're in real estate, whether you're in royalties. So it's all geared towards very carefully and specifically for private assets. So yeah, mid-June is go live time, and we'll certainly hear. Hopefully, audience will see us over the next, certainly months. More noise and news and education, about it.
Well, it's an exciting development. I think it's going to add a lot of value. So thank you for sharing your time and also your insights, Christian.
Thank you.